Well, that LC500 I was just in is an excellent Grand Tourer, and it even holds up in the corners pretty well. If you're somebody that wants a bigger helping of performance in your luxury car, then you're probably headed to Germany. But you are going to have to turn those pockets inside out a bit because that performance comes at a cost. This SL63 starts at $187,000, and this one's optioned up to over $200,000. That is quite spendy for this car, but as always, we're going to go through this thing from the outside in, talk about what it's been like to live with, talk about what that $200,000 gets you. Let's go ahead and take a look. Under the hood here, of course, we have hydraulics. You would expect that at 200 grand. We have a hand-built 4-liter biturbo V8. This thing is going to make 577 horsepower at its peak, 590 pound-feet of torque. Plenty of power going on. That doesn't quite do it for you. There is a new plug-in hybrid version, which is going to make over 800 horsepower and over 1,000 pound-feet of torque. I can't imagine anybody needs quite that much power, but if you want the biggest and the best, then go for that one. That one is the SL63 SE Performance something or other. The names are getting way too long. Or if this is too much for you, there's a detuned version of this in the SL55. There's an SL43 with a 2-liter 4-cylinder with a mild hybrid system. I mean, an interesting choice in this car. I really think that the V8 biturbo is the way to go, the one that we have in this SL63. Your only transmission option here is going to be a 9-speed multi-clutch transmission that is built in-house. That is an AMG thing. That is not a dual clutch transmission, is not a torque converter automatic transmission. It is a multi-clutch system that is sort of an AMG specialty. We'll talk about it a little bit more during the drive, how that thing shifts. But your power is going to be through the 4MATIC all-wheel drive system. That is the only drivetrain available for this one. There is no rear drive version, but you do get a rear limited slip differential when you get the SL63. You also get active rear steering when you get the SL63. I'll talk about that a little bit more during the drive as well. Your fuel economy is probably not super important when you're buying a car like this, but it is worth noting. It is 14 city, 21 highway, at least that's what the EPA says. I'm getting about 14 in mixed driving, but it's pretty hard to stay off the throttle. So, you know, if you're buying this car and you are staying off the throttle, then props to you, but you're probably going to get closer to 13, 14 miles per gallon if you're driving anywhere near like I'm driving. And while the SL stands for Sport Light, somebody forgot to tell the engineers this thing weighs about as much as a Tacoma. We're looking at about 4,300 pounds. So it is quite hefty, but it's got plenty of power, plenty of torque, and it does hide the weight pretty well for the most part. We'll talk about that during the drive as well. This car is just absolutely beautiful from nearly every single angle. And a lot of Roadsters, a lot of convertibles don't really look great with the top up. This one even looks good with the top up. This color here is called Hyper Blue Metallic. It is a special order color and it is stunning in person. I would absolutely buy a car in this color. I've had so many people stop me and tell me how beautiful this thing is. And in certain lights, it kind of looks turquoise or kind of teal, but there's really no bad lighting. Even in the wrong light, it still looks really, really pretty. Overall, we're looking at 185 inches. It's a like compact sedan size, a couple inches shorter than that LC500 I was just in, but the wheelbase here is going to be way shorter than that car. That one had 113-inch wheelbase. This one's at 106. That's going to help quite a bit with the handling. It's going to hurt the ride quality, but we'll talk about that again during the drive. We're sitting on 21s on this one. You get 20s, also a couple of different options for 21s. These are the black forged wheels with the 10-spoke. These are going to set you back $3,300, and they're wrapped in Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's. These tires are really like your gold standard sticky street performance tire. Perfect tire for this car, definitely. And we've got a staggered setup with the wider tires in the back and the thinner ones in the front, since even though this is technically an all-wheel drive system, most of your power is going to be coming from those back wheels. Got the composite brakes on this 6-piston caliper in the front fixed and the 1-piston floating caliper in the back. These brakes are really, really good. We'll talk about those during the drive as well. A lot of this gloss black stuff you see around here from the night package, the gloss black mirror caps, the side sills there, this sort of gloss black trim. You'll see some gloss black badges around because of that night package. You see the camera poking down over here because this does have the full 360 view. That one is not actually standard. That is part of a package. I feel like that should probably be standard, but definitely a good one to have on this thing. LED turn signal in here. You can see it's power folded. You have touch to lock, touch to unlock on the outside here. And the door handles pop out. You even get some puddle lights going on at night. Can't see them right now during the day, but there's welcome lighting in there as well. And as you walk up to the car, actually, those handles will pop out. And the soft top here, you do have a couple of different color options for it. The black one looks great, honestly, but you do have a gray as well. Front end here, aggressive but classy. Lots of open cooling in here. You got to cool that big engine down. Even got cooling over here for the brakes. A lot of times automakers will block this stuff off, but this is real venting going through to cool down those brakes. Parking sensors across the front that will get tripped. When you get close to something, it'll set off the camera on the inside. Really nice feature there. So if you're getting too close to something, you can actually get a good feel for where you are without having to activate the camera on your own. And it's got the front parking camera there. Of course, as I mentioned, it has the full 360. This dark chrome and the gloss black down here is because of that night package that I mentioned. This gloss black splitter going on down here. LED headlights, LED daytime running lights. These are adaptive. They will corner with you. Of course, they've got to make them dance, do fun little designs. They can't just turn on and off. They do different little lighting signatures. So if you're into that, kind of a cool little touch there. But really aggressive, but still classy. Really like the look of this front end. Back end here, we got the LED tail lights, we got the dark badges, the dark diffuser down here, all this gloss black, the dark chrome tips on the quad exhaust because of that night package. Again, got the parking sensors across the back. Of course, we've got a backup camera. This exhaust, it sounds really, really nice. Of course it does. It's a V8 biturbo. We do have a wing here that is speed activated. It also turns it into a sports car, according to my daughter's logic. But this will come up at 50 miles per hour, or you can hit the button on the inside if you want to manually activate it. And depending on your speed, once you're above 50 miles per hour, depending on your speed, depending on what driving mode you're in, there are actually 5 different angles that it could be in to maximize your downforce. And speaking of downforce and aerodynamics, you can also option a carbon fiber piece underneath that you can then activate at speed to maximize your downforce and sort of minimize some of the drag. But this one does not have that option, just has the wing, which is standard. And this one does have the kick to open option, but that does not come standard, which feels a little bit odd at this price point. Or of course you can always use the key, and it opens up into about 7.5 cubic feet of space, a little bit more than a Miata. That's your bar when you're buying a Roadster. But it is fairly deep. You can fit a couple of pieces of luggage in here. You could easily fit your golf clubs in here if that's what you're doing. This 12 volt back here is not standard. That comes as part of the cargo package, as does this cargo organizer down here. Underneath the floor here, we do have some tools. No spare tire. Didn't really expect a spare tire in a Roadster like this. This thing here will actually fold out of the way. This button, super confusing. It's really hard to tell what it does. And when you have the top down, actually it doesn't do anything. So that took me a little while to figure out. When you have the top up, you press that and this piece will move out of the way. It'll give you 8.5 cubic feet of space. So now you got a little bit more space. But when you have the top down, then the top has to fit into there. So you do lose a little bit of that space. And of course we can close from right there. I mentioned you can open the trunk with the key fob. Of course, you've also got lock and unlock, and then you've got your physical key here. If your key fob dies, you pull out the door handle and stick it right in there to get the door opened with a physical key, if anybody remembers how physical keys work nowadays. But the other things you can do with this key fob are you can open and close the top and put the windows up and down. So if I hold down the unlock key, then it'll roll the windows down and open the top up, which is nice. If you're about to get in the car, you don't want to deal with holding the button down on the inside. I like having a physical button to hold on to instead of dragging the little icon over and holding your finger on there. Or if it's about to rain or something and you turn off the car and you forgot to close the top, then you just hold down the lock button here. Now, the first time you do it, it will just close the top. If you want to close the windows, then you do have to actually hit it again and hold it down again, and then it'll close those windows up. All right, on the inside here, it's surprisingly easy to get into, actually. I really thought it was going to be a little bit tougher climbing down. Ingress, egress is pretty good here. But the interior has me kind of scratching my head a little bit. It's like 95% of the way to perfect. It's so nice in here for the most part, and then it's like the last 5%, they accidentally ordered Ultima SL parts instead of Mercedes SL. Like, I don't know what happened. Like, the gloss black through here, and then the plasticky gloss black buttons, more of this gloss black stuff up here. The sliders on the like capacitive sliders on the steering wheel. This piece here, which is capacitive and just like feels very tacked on and plasticky. The like gloss black and sliders feel like they are trying to save cost here. They're trying to save money, make it look nicer than it is, so it can sort of punch above its price point. Which a $30,000 car, annoying, but fine, I get it. In a $200,000 car, or like beyond frustrating at this point, because why are you cutting costs here? Especially when everything else is so nice though. The nap leather steering wheel, there's leather up here, even got leather up in the front here. Like, this is not a touch point. Leather down in the door cards, again, not even a touch point. The materials everywhere else are so nice. I love the look of these vents. They look kind of like jet engines. The ambient lighting is beautiful. It's all over the place. And especially at night, it looks really, really nice. Got the metal speakers, metal buttons and switches over here on the side. Really great to interact with. Nice metal paddle shifters. I love that they left these knobs and buttons down here on the performance steering wheel, so you can kind of switch what you want to be able to control quickly for your performance stuff, and you can just easily access that with switches and then change your drive mode here nice and easily on the right hand side, or access your drive select here. This down here is, it's great that it's quick access to stuff because everything really is buried in the infotainment. It's a little bit annoying that you have to have a couple of clicks to get to pretty much anything, but I do like that they at least gave you quick access to stuff. I just wish it wasn't like this. I wish these were just regular real buttons. But you get easy access to setting up your drive modes here. You get easy access to all your 360 camera, all your different camera views in here. A little bit annoying on this thing, you do have to like pull over and hold. You have to slide over and hold it if you want to open or close the top. But the other option is you could just push this button down here and hold it. So I like that they give you like more than one way to do that, because sliding over and holding is kind of annoying. Kind of a quirky little thing. The windows on this car are always up, even when the top's coming down or coming up. But when you actually open and close the top, the windows are always open. It automatically opens the windows. Just kind of a quirky little note. You got all kinds of stuff through here though. You got performance monitoring, you got track recording, you got your comfort settings for your massage seats. You can change all the ambient lighting, you can change the sound. This one has the Burmeister 3D sound system. That is extra. It's an extra $4,500. It's a great sound system, 17 speakers with a subwoofer. Plus it's got this like spider actuator thing going on through the headliner. Really great sound system. Definitely worth the money there. So much buried in here. And then this one has the heads-up display optioned. That is not going to be standard. I feel like that should be standard at this price point. And then you can also do like a nose lift here. So if you're somewhere like your curb on your driveway is like really high or something, then it's nice to have that ability to raise a little bit so you can get over that, or if you have a spot with a really rough road for a short period of time and you don't want to bottom out. And the heads-up display is really helpful. It's not a ton of information. A lot of times Mercedes has like packed in a whole bunch of information in their heads-up display. This one is pretty minimal. It's got your speed, it's got the speed limit. It's got your driver's assist stuff going if you have any of that active. It's pretty helpful for me if you're like me, where I always have a problem where the steering wheel is blocking the top of the gauge cluster, and I like the super sport mode on the gauge cluster, so it blocks. So basically the 4 things at the top of the instrument cluster are things that are in the heads-up display. Plus, if you have nav running even on Android Auto, then the nav will run through the heads-up display as well. So that's pretty nice. And then the gauge cluster, again, tons and tons of information. There's performance information, service information. You want to see your tire pressure, your transmission temperature, whatever you want to see, and want to see navigation through there, or you just want a minimal, you want to see what gear you're in and your tack. And then you can pretty much set this up in whatever way you want. I like the super sport mode a lot. You watch how much horsepower, how much torque you're putting out. You see your temperatures, you see your tack, and you see what gear you're in. Really, I like the way they do this. They make it so customizable, and it's clean and it's easy to read. The seats, I mentioned, they're heated, they're ventilated. They've got this air scarf thing going on if you want a blast of hot air through your neck, if you're really cold, I guess. They've got massage functions, as I mentioned. If you want a sport seat, there's also a sport seat option that'll give you adjustable bolsters. I do wish these were adjustable, but honestly, for me and my size, these are perfect. I'm 5'7", about 200 pounds. If that helps you kind of figure out where these seats are set for the bolstering. And you can adjust all of that stuff through the door, because Mercedes always puts their controls on the door. The thigh adjusters down here. Your headrest, you can adjust everything through here. You can even adjust the other seat if you hit this little R button on the side here. And we got 3-way memory settings going on as well. Micro suede headliner, actually surprisingly quiet, even with this soft top. I think that headliner helps quite a bit. And as you can see, I actually have a decent amount of headroom here, even with this top closed. Again, I'm only 5'7", so I'm not super tall, but I do have plenty of room to move the seat back, and I do have quite a bit of headspace above me. So even if you're on the taller side, really won't be too much of an issue. If you are in the back seat, well, I hope you either don't have legs or you're very, very, very small, because I wouldn't really put anybody back there. There are ISOFIX latches back there. I did manage to get my kids back there yesterday, actually. It was quite tight, and I had to push my seat all the way forward to get my 5-year-old behind me. But I was able to still drive fairly comfortably. I wouldn't want to be in that position for a super long time. A little bit of extra room down here, and it's rubberized. A couple of USB-Cs down here. Cup holders pretty much out of the way, unless you have like a giant American cup, and then you can't really get to the infotainment anymore. A couple of USB-Cs in here as well. Wireless charger. Wireless charger has been good for the most part. A couple of times it has overheated on some of the hotter days. A couple of days it was like 80 degrees, and it got hot pretty fast and couldn't really charge. A little bit annoying. Same thing happened in the last Mercedes I was in too, where it would overheat quite a bit. And then you also have a tilt for this, so you don't have to worry about the glare so much. If you're having a problem with the glare, especially with the top down, you can just tilt the angle of this. But overall, like I said, 95% of the way there, this interior is beautiful. It's comfortable. It's so nice in here. It's just like the last 5% here, something happened. So as always, with the cars I review, I've been daily driving this one for the last week, and the ride quality is pretty brutal, especially when you compare it to like the F-Type R, the LC500 that I was just in. It's surprisingly rough, especially for a Roadster, something with the top that comes off. I expected this to lean a lot more Grand Tourer. So, unless your roads are really, really nice, or if you're coming from daily driving a horse currently to this, it's going to be rough. But that also helps when you want to push it. So on the performance side of things, it feels a lot more buttoned up than those cars. And actually, between the suspension setup and the steering, those are the two biggest things that are going to differentiate this from those other cars, the F-Type R, the LC500. The steering is always video game light. It's like It feels super effortless. It doesn't feel super engaging, super involved. It's just loose and light. Those cars are very confident, but they're floaty in the corners and very easy to steer. Whereas this one, you pop it into Sport or Sport Plus, and the steering really stiffens up. The suspension stiffens up. You feel a lot more engaged. The steering also is very direct. There's not really much dead space in the middle at all. It has a very, very strong on-center feel, and it really feels very engaging. It also feels very confident. It has, that German buttoned up feel to it when you throw it through corners. It does have a lot more body roll than those other cars that I mentioned, just because those are a lot more floaty. This one is stiffer, and it still weighs 4,300 pounds. As I mentioned before, it's a heavy car, and momentum is a hell of a drug. So it does have that lean to it, but it's not so much that you feel like you're going to lose it. And it feels like you're involved. It doesn't feel like the car is just floating through all the corners super effortlessly. Other things that are really going to help it in the corners are the fact that it has a nice short wheelbase, as well as the active rear steering. I mentioned that's standard on the SL63. The rear wheels can turn up to 2.5 degrees opposite the front wheels when you're going under 62 miles per hour. 2.5 degrees doesn't seem like a lot, but it really does help shorten that turning radius quite a bit. So if you are canyon carving in this, it'll let you do a lot more technical tight turns. If you're going over 62 miles an hour, then it will turn up to 0.7 degrees with the direction of the front wheels, which will help with a lot of the balance in the big or sort of sweepy curves. Now, with all this power, you got to worry about traction a bit. Some of the muscle cars with the big power kind of step out on you a bit if you really stomp on it. This one does have launch control as well, by the way. But with the all-wheel drive system, it really does help keep everything pretty planted, as well as having these PS4Ss. I really haven't had any problems with traction, even when I stomp on it hard, or even when I do use that launch control. I have launched it a couple of times, had zero issues with it getting squirrely on me. Really stayed pretty confident. And of course, with this big engine, even though it does weigh quite a bit, it has almost 600 horsepower, almost 600 pound-feet of torque at its peak. And with it being turbocharged, you put your foot into it and you move 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds, and it can get out of its own way super easily. You put it into comfort mode, it'll kind of ease you onto the throttle a little bit, but Sport or Sport Plus, they do a really good job of just reacting to the throttle pedal pretty quickly, and they do a good job of mitigating the turbo lag because there really isn't too much of that going on. One thing I was a little bit worried about with this transmission, when I was in the C43, that one had a 9-speed multi-clutch it was another AMG multi-clutch transmission, and it was very clunky in the low gears. It was harsh. It would also kind of lug a little bit before downshifting if you put your foot into it. This one has been much more responsive. It feels a lot quicker to shift, and the programming is just better in general than that C43 was. And it also seems to warm up a little bit quicker, though it has been a lot warmer here in general, so that may be helping in this situation. Now, it's not going to be super smooth. Like a ZF 8-speed is a lot smoother for your daily drive. Still, the lower gears here are a little bit on the clunky side, but not nearly as harsh as they were in that C43. Like the 1-2 and the 2-3 shifts were just like pretty rough in that car. Here you can feel the clunk, but it's not, it doesn't feel like it's overkill. It feels like it's par for the course with something that has a more performance-oriented transmission. As far as the power delivery goes, you've got a 7,000 RPM red line. You can really only hit that in like second gear unless you want to go to jail. But it does hold power pretty well all the way through the rev range. I haven't really noticed any big dips in power or anything, and it hits very nicely when you're up in the top of the range and you put your foot into it, and it will get out of its own way immediately. Really solid power delivery, really solid transmission, solid steering. It's not super communicative steering, but it is engaging and it's on the heavier side. The suspension setup is nice and stiff. Now, all of that is excellent for when you're pushing the car, which is really what this is meant to do. It's meant for putting the top down, going down, canyon carving or something. Maybe a couple of track days here and there. It's not really necessarily a daily driver, but as I mentioned, if you have nice roads around you, you could definitely daily drive this, or if you're just used to having a rough ride in general, you could daily drive this. And it has a lot of driver's assist features. This one in particular has all the driver's assist options on top of it, like another $1,800 for the additional driver's assist features. And everything works pretty well. Nothing has really gotten super in my way. The automatic brake assist has gotten a little bit in my way. It's like pretty aggressive. Now, when a car is as quick, you want it to be able to slow down quickly as well. And these brakes are pretty spot on. I feel like they're just the right amount of grabbiness. I really prefer kind of a grabbier brake in general in a more performance-oriented car. And these are nice and grabby. They're not so grabby that they're going to like jerk you if you don't finesse it just right, or like jerk your passenger's head back or anything. But they're grabby enough that I feel very confident in my stopping ability, and like I can be going very quickly and stop in a very short distance. The blind spot monitoring has been great. The blind spot assist that this one has, in addition to the regular blind spot monitoring, where it'll kind of like beep at you if somebody's in that lane and you have your turn signal on. It's a little bit aggressive, but really not too bad. Has a rear cross traffic alert, cross traffic braking, has all kinds of safety stuff that is definitely super helpful for that daily drive. And it has adaptive cruise control all the way down to stop and go, which is great if you're someplace that has a lot of traffic, or if you're planning on taking this thing on a road trip and you're just sawing highway miles. Either way, that adaptive cruise is definitely a super helpful feature. Has the lane tracing, which works really well. Mercedes has a great system for the lane tracing, where it kind of keeps you centered in your lane. So again, on those long highway trips, I probably wouldn't use that on the track. Might break down a little bit when you come in through some of those tight corners. And it also has automatic lane change, which seems like overkill, but they're starting to add that to more and more cars nowadays. And Mercedes has that in a couple of their cars. It works well. I mean, if you don't want to deal with the lane changes, like if you're just sawing highway miles, you can have your auto lane change on. It'll beep at you. It'll tell you it's about to change lanes for you, and it'll pass people, and it'll cut back over. One thing I noticed, like with Super Cruise, it doesn't really cut back over very often. It'll mostly just change lanes to the left. With this system, it'll change back and forth. It's nice because I can't stand people that camp in the left lane, so I'm glad that it cuts back over to the right. But this stuff is like, it's all super helpful for those long trips. None of it is really getting in the way day to day, other than that braking that I mentioned gets in the way every once in a while, but really hasn't happened too often. And the blind spot is a little bit on the aggressive side, but doesn't really hurt too much. And visibility all around, even there isn't really a big blind spot because this has such a long open window here. Since it is a 2+2, you get a little bit of a longer door. You can see pretty well. There's not a lot of blind spot over there with these little tiny Shrek mirrors. Visibility out the front is pretty good. Visibility out the back is like a coin slot with the top up. I mean, anytime you get in a convertible, you're probably going to have pretty bad visibility with the top up. My only real issue with it as a daily driver is that the rideability is pretty rough. Everything else about it is plenty comfortable for the daily drive. A hell of a car to throw through some twisty back roads or go canyon carving in. If you want German luxury and performance, you're gonna have to pay for it. This car really is priced about right, even with its high price tag here at $200,000. With the level of performance, the materials, the sound system, the latest and greatest tech, this really is priced about where it should be. You gotta pay to play. But there are some things with the interior, the gloss black, the capacitive stuff is beyond frustrating in something that costs this much money. Those were a problem when I was in the C63, and that was only a $60,000 car. Here at over $200,000, those should not be a problem, especially since I know that Mercedes has really nice switchgear for their steering wheels that they could use. And I know that the rest of the materials around the cabin are so nice that why couldn't they just switch out some of that gloss black stuff? That part is very, very frustrating. But the rest of the package really is excellent. If you're looking for a weekend canyon carver, you like top-down canyon carving, or just bombing down some back roads, then this is excellent for that. Couple of track days here and there. If you're someone that's looking for more of a grand tour or something that's going to be a little bit better for daily driving or for the long road trips, the ride quality is pretty rough. So definitely see if you can test drive one first and see if you can handle that level of ride quality. But beyond that, this car is an absolute blast. Let me know what you think down in the comments. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.